Než začneme, mám malou prosbu. Snažím se dosáhnout 1000 odběratelů, je to pro mě velmi důležité číslo. Prosím, klikněte na tlačítko odebírat, subscribe. Je to jen malé kliknutí, ale pro mě obrovská motivace pokračovat ve tvorbě videí. Moc vám všem děkuji. AYANA's wrists were yanked high and tied to 2 rotting wooden posts. The rope pulled so tight it cut into her flesh. Her breathing trembled, but her eyes stayed sharp and ice cold. In front of her, Colt Mercer slowly stepped closer, his boots pressing into the dusty ground. "You are the last person who knows where the silver vein is," he said, his voice flat, like he was discussing a business deal. "Tell me, and this ends here." AYANA said nothing. One of the bandits let out a mocking laugh and pressed a knife into her side. "Stubborn, are you?" Colt gave a small nod. "Keep her awake. I need words, not a corpse." Another bandit sneered and slid the blade closer against her ribs. Bang! The sound ripped through the air. The bandit, standing behind AYANA, collapsed to the ground. Everyone froze. From the far end of the street, Elias Crow stepped out of the dust. His long coat hung still, and his gun was still smoking. He stopped in the middle of the road, his gaze as cold as steel. "Put it all back!" Colt Mercer narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharp as a blade. "You took a wrong turn, friend." Elias Crow did not answer. His eyes flicked toward AYANA REDHAWK just for a split second, but long enough to see the rope biting into her flesh. Long enough to understand exactly what was happening. One of the bandits raised his gun. Bang! He dropped before he could even pull the trigger. Everything exploded into chaos. Gunfire slammed against the rotting walls. Dust filled the air. AYANA squeezed her eyes shut as a bullet tore past her ear and buried itself deep into the wooden post behind her. When she opened them again, 3 men were already down. Colt Mercer stepped back, pulling the 2 remaining men with him. His eyes locked onto the stranger. "This is not over." Then they retreated, disappearing behind the crumbling buildings. Silence fell. Elias Crow walked forward, slow, unhurried. He pulled out a knife and sliced the ropes clean. AYANA's body sagged, but she caught herself just in time, bracing against the ground. They faced each other. "Who are you?" she asked. "Does not matter." AYANA tightened her grip on her still bleeding wrists. "No one does something like this without a reason." Elias paused. "Do not get it twisted. I am not a hero." His voice was low, emotionless. He turned and walked away, leaving the empty street behind. AYANA stepped after Elias Crow. They stopped beneath a lone withered tree as the sun began to dip low. Elias set his canteen on the ground without a word. Across from him, AYANA sat down, her hands still trembling faintly from the pain. The wind passed between them for a long while. "The black vultures are not the real enemy," AYANA finally said. "They are just hunting dogs." She pulled a small folded piece of goatskin from inside her coat and carefully opened it. Rough lines marked mountains, a narrow stream, and a crescent moon symbol. Elias glanced at it once. His jaw tightened slightly. "Silver Creek," he said quietly. AYANA nodded. "Victor Langford wants that silver vein badly enough to steal our horses, burn our tents, and bleed my tribe dry, but he needs me alive to point out the exact location." Elias said nothing. AYANA went on, her voice steady. "I am carrying evidence to Boise. Lawyer Daniel Whitaker. He is the only one left who is still willing to stand against Langford." Elias let out a faint scoff, not quite a laugh. "What about the law? Sheriff Douglas Hale?" AYANA gave a dry smile. "He has been taking Silver Creek money for 3 years." The wind picked up. A system came into focus. Robbery money the law twisted out of shape. Elias stood, brushing the dust from his coat. "You will be dead before you reach Boise." AYANA rose as well. "Maybe." She looked him straight in the eyes. "But I am going anyway." Silence stretched between them. Elias turned, took a few steps, then stopped. The wind swept across the 2 figures standing in the wasteland. He did not look back. "We move at night." Night fell fast and cold. 2 horses stood tied beneath the dead branches. A small fire burned quietly, its faint light flickering across AYANA REDHAWK's face. She was trying to tighten the cloth around her wrists, but her hands trembled, leaving the knot loose and uneven. Across from her, Elias Crow sat in silence, watching. After a moment, he stood and walked over. "Give it to me." AYANA hesitated, but did not resist. Elias took the strip of cloth and pulled it tight, firm, and clean. His movements were precise, no wasted motion. "If you hold a gun like that, your wrist will tear open before you even fire a second shot," he said. AYANA frowned. "I do not need you to teach me." Elias finished tying the bandage and let go of her hands. "Then you will die." The words were quiet, but they cut straight through the air. AYANA said nothing. Elias returned to his spot, took out his revolver, set it on the ground, and slid it toward her. Pick it up. She looked at him, then at the gun. She bent down and picked it up. Do not grip it too tight, Elias said. Let the gun breathe. AYANA adjusted her hold. Not like that. Elias stepped behind her, keeping just enough distance. He reached out, adjusted her wrist, lifted her elbow slightly. Relax. Then lock it at the end. AYANA followed his lead. Shoot that bottle. A glass bottle sat on a rock a few yards away. She aimed. Bang. The bullet missed, kicking up dirt behind it. AYANA clenched her teeth. Elias did not react. Again. This time, she took a deeper breath. Bang. The bottle shattered. Silence followed. AYANA lowered the gun, her breathing unsteady. Elias turned away, sat back down as if nothing had happened. Are you going with me to Boise? She asked. There was no immediate answer. The fire crackled softly. Then Elias spoke, his voice low. I will stay until you know how to survive on your own. AYANA looked at him. Not a promise, but enough. Boise came into view in the pale light of morning. Not as ruined as a dead town, but not as clean as it pretended to be. People moved along the streets. Wagons rolled past, but beneath the dust, something rotten lingered. Elias Crow pulled the brim of his hat lower. AYANA walked beside him, her eyes scanning everything, not afraid, but alert. They stopped in front of an old brick building. A sign read, Law Office Daniel Whitaker. Inside Daniel Whitaker was a man in his 50s, his hair gray, his eyes tired but sharp. He studied the piece of goatskin AYANA handed him, his brow tightening. Do you understand what this means? He asked. AYANA nodded. I do, and I also understand they will kill me to keep it quiet. Whitaker glanced at Elias. And you? Elias did not answer. Whitaker let out a breath. Victor Langford does not just have money. He has people inside the system. He stood and walked to the window. Sheriff Douglas Hale will not help. And the court. He hesitated. Judge Harold Whitman? AYANA asked. Whitaker turned back, his expression heavy. He used to be an honest man. And now? Elias spoke. Whitaker did not answer right away. His wife, Evelyn Whitman. She is tied to Silver Creek. The room fell silent. AYANA clenched her hands. So that is it? She asked. The law belongs to them, too? Whitaker shook his head. No, but it is being twisted. He looked straight at her. If you take this to court, you will not just be facing Langford. You will be facing the entire system protecting him. Elias stood, his eyes cold. Then we break it. Whitaker gave a dry laugh. You think no one has tried? Elias met his gaze. No one has lived long enough to finish it. Outside, the sound of hooves came fast and heavy. Whitaker looked toward the window, his face changing. They got here faster than I expected. Elias turned. AYANA heard it too. Boots striking the pavement, the clink of metal. They had been followed. AYANA looked at Elias. There was no way back now, only forward. Outside, the street fell into a strange silence. Then the pounding of leather boots slammed against the pavement. Too many footsteps, too heavy. The office door burst open. 3 men stepped inside, long coats hanging low, guns visible at their hips. Leading them was a familiar face, Sheriff Douglas Hale. Lawyer Whitaker, he said. We received word that someone brought forged documents here. AYANA stepped forward. You know they are not fake. Hale looked at her, his eyes cold as ice. You should go back to where you belong, AYANA. Elias Crow shifted slightly, placing himself between them, shielding half of her. You planning to arrest her for telling the truth? Hale smirked. I am keeping order. The air turned heavy. Whitaker stepped forward, his voice tight. Sheriff, you do not have a warrant. Does not matter. Hale cut him off. His hand dropped closer to his gun. A beat. Bang. The shot cracked through the room. The window shattered. A bullet tore in from outside. One of the 3 men dropped. Chaos erupted. Elias pulled AYANA down, rolling to the side as another volley slammed into the wall. Langford does not want a trial, Whitaker shouted. He wants this finished here. Elias fired back 2 clean shots. Another man went down. Sheriff Hale stepped back, using the chaos to slip outside. Move! Elias shouted. They rushed out the back door. A narrow alley, dark, choked with trash and mud. Footsteps thundered behind them. AYANA ran, but suddenly Elias staggered. A bullet struck his shoulder, blood quickly soaking through his shirt. Elias! AYANA grabbed him. Do not stop, he growled. Run! but she did not let go. She pulled him into an abandoned back room, shoved the door shut, and slid the bolt into place. Outside, footsteps rushed past. Silence. Inside, Elias leaned against the wall, his breathing heavy. AYANA tore a strip of cloth and pressed it against the wound. "You could die from this," she said softly. Elias looked at her, his vision dim with pain, but his eyes still sharp. "I have almost died for less." AYANA tightened her grip than this time. "You leave." In the distance, a church bell began to ring. At the same time, in another room across town, Judge Harold Whitman stood by a window, looking down at the chaos in the street. His gaze stopped when he saw the blood on Elias's hands, and AYANA still standing beside him, refusing to leave. Something inside him began to crack. 3 days later, the courtroom was packed. The news had spread faster than the wind. An Apache woman carrying evidence against Silver Creek, a nameless gunman who survived an ambush, and a judge who could lose everything. Judge Harold Whitman stepped in and struck the gavel. His face was calm, but his eyes were deep and heavy. "This court is now in session. For the plaintiff, Daniel Whitaker. For the defense, Victor Langford." Sitting upright, composed as if watching a play. Behind him, Sheriff Douglas Hale and Colt Mercer. AYANA stood to testify. She did not tremble. "My tribe had our horses stolen. Our people were threatened, but the real target is the silver vein beneath Red Mesa." She placed the piece of goatskin forward. Whitaker continued, presenting the case, marked maps, transport records, witness testimony. Elias Crow stepped forward. His shoulder was still tightly bandaged. "I saw them torture her to force the location out of her," he said, brief and steady. Langford let out a dry laugh. "Just a story from a drifter and a wild girl." The defense attorney stood. "Objection. There is no verified legal evidence." The room filled with murmurs. Judge Whitman remained silent for a long time. His eyes moved across the room. AYANA, Elias, Langford, and stopped at Evelyn Whitman, seated in the back row. Her gaze was cold, confident. Whitman's hand tightened on the bench. "Call the next witness." Whitaker nodded. "The court calls Evelyn Whitman." The entire room froze. Evelyn rose slowly. "Harold," she said quietly, "you do not have to do this. Whitman se na ní podíval, už ne jako manžel, ale jen jako soudce. Jste spojena se Silver Creek? Ticho. 1 vteřina, 2 vteřiny. Pak ano. V soudní síni se rozlehl nával vydechnutého vzduchu. Evelyn pokračovala, její hlas se lehce třásl. "Investovala jsem. Věděla jsem o akvizicích pozemků a používání gangů." Whitman na okamžik zavřel oči. Když je otevřel, už nebylo žádné váhání. Prohlášení zaznamenáno. Soudce Whitman zvedl kladívko a tvrdě s ním udeřil. Ostré klapnutí se rozlehlo soudní síní. Victor Langford, vínen. Soudní síň se rozbouřila. Šepoty, skřípání židlí, lidé vstávající jako zlomená vlna. Ale uprostřed toho všeho zůstal soudce Harold Whitman sedět, ruka spočívající na kladívku, jako by za ten jediný úder vyměnil celý svůj život. Victor Langford, prohlásil nízkým a konečným hlasem, je obviněn ze spiknutí s kriminálními gangy, nezákonného zabrání majetku a pokusu o vraždu. Je vydán zatykač, platný okamžitě. 2 zástupci vystoupili vpřed. Langford vstal, jeho úsměv zmizel. "Myslíte, že to tady končí, soudce?" řekl tichým hlasem. Whitman se na něj nepodíval. "Ne, ale dnes to začíná." Šerif Douglas Hale byl na místě zbaven odznaku. Colt Mercer byl odveden v okovech, jeho oči stále hořely záští, když se mu kolem zápěstí zacvakly pouta. V zadní řadě stála Evelyn Whitman v tichosti. Nebrečela. Jen se dívala na svého manžela, jako by to byl cizinec. Whitman se neohlédl. Pozdní odpoledne, poslední světlo dne, se usadilo nad ulicemi Boyce, nyní jemnější po dlouhé bouři. AYANA REDHAWK stála na schodech soudní budovy. Vítr jí jemně čechral vlasy. Už žádná lana. Už žádná krev. Jen svoboda. Daniel Whitaker vyšel za ní. "Dokázala jsi to," řekl. AYANA zavrtěla hlavou. "Dokázali jsme to." Přikývl a pak odešel. Otočila se. Přes ulici se Elias Crow opíral o dřevěný sloup. Jeho rameno bylo stále obvázané, ale jeho oči se změnily, méně chladné, méně odtažité. "Odjíždíš?" zeptala se AYANA a přistoupila blíž. Elias se podíval na dlouhou cestu před sebou. "To je to, co dělám." Chvíle uplynula. AYANA stála vedle něj, nedotýkala se ho, ale byla dost blízko. "Moje kmenová komunita přestavuje stáje," řekla. "Budeme potřebovat někoho, kdo ví, jak je udržet naživu přes zimu." Elias neodpověděl hned. Vítr procházel mezi nimi a nesl vůni suché země a trávy. Podíval se na své ruce, zjizvené, zvyklé odcházet. Pak se podíval na ní. Poprvé cesta před ním nevypadala jako jediná. "Zní to jako práce," řekl. "Ne slib, ale ani odmítnutí." AYANA se lehce pousmála. Stáli tam, v záři zapadajícího slunce a už nic neříkali. Ale tentokrát Elias Crow nešel sám. V následujících dnech se bojze pomalu vracelo do svého starého rytmu, ale už nebylo stejné. Jméno Victor Langford se vyslovovalo jako varování, ne jako moc. Smlouvy byly znovu otevřeny, pozemky znovu prozkoumány a poprvé po letech se lidé začali ptát, komu skutečně patří půda, na které žijí. Venku v Redmesa se koně vrátili. Ne všichni, ale dost na to, aby se začalo znovu. Apači nepořádali velkou oslavu. Prostě pracovali na opravě plotů, stájí a udržovali oheň živý přes noc, protože pochopili, že svoboda není okamžik. Je to něco, co je třeba chránit každý den. AYANA REDHAWK stála na své zemi, už nesvázaná, už nic nedokazující. Nezměnila svět, ale donutila svět se znovu podívat. A někdy to stačí. Na okraji tábora Elias Crow zavřel dveře stáje. Jeho ruce stále poznamenané jizvami, které se ještě nezahojily. Moc nemluvil. Nikdo se neptal, odkud přišel a nikdo se neptal, kam půjde, protože poprvé nemusel odejít. Někteří lidé stráví celý život útěkem před minulostí. Někteří bojují, aby ji změnili. Ale málo kdo si uvědomí, že spravedlnost nezačíná v zákoně. Začíná v okamžiku, kdy se člověk rozhodne nepoklonit. A když jeden člověk stojí vzpřímeně, ostatní to uvidí. Pak se také postaví na půdu, která jim byla kdysi vzata. Nebylo to stříbro pod zemí, co změnilo všechno. Byli to lidé, kteří se konečně rozhodli postavit na stranu toho, co je správné. Příběh, který sledujete, obsahuje mnoho fiktivních prvků, znovu vytvořených s pomocí umělé inteligence. Poslouchejte prosím s vlastním uvážením a pocity. Tyto fiktivní detaily nemají za cíl změnit historii, ale evokovat ducha starého, divokého západu, kde lidé museli žít v drsných podmínkách, činit obtížná rozhodnutí a přijímat důsledky. Prostřednictvím tohoto příběhu doufám pouze sdílet některé cenné lekce o soucitu, lásce a odvaze, věci, které zůstávají relevantní i s postupem času. Příběhy ze Starého západu jsou určeny ke sdílení. Pokud se vás tento příběh dotkl, dejte mi vědět číslem 1. A pokud si přejete slyšet více, přihlaste se k odběru, až budete připraveni. Miluji vás všechny, vážené publikum, těch nejlepších příběhů divokého západu. Děkuji, že jste sledovali toto video až do konce. Opravdu si vážím každé chvíle, kterou jste zde se mnou strávili. Právě teď směřujeme k prvnímu milníku. 1000 odběratelů. Pokud vás moje příběhy alespoň trochu oslovily, prosím podpořte mě kliknutím na tlačítko odebírat, subscribe. Každý odběr je pro mě velkou motivací pokračovat a přinášet vám další hodnotné příběhy. Uvidíme se v dalším videu.